Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Rhonda Farrell, the CEO of Global Innovation Strategies, bringing you week 21, a spotlight on what's next 2026. Today, we're talking about from strategic influence to institutional legacy, designing what endures. We have been talking over the last several weeks about a deliberate leadership evolution, establishing trust, turning that into traction and scalable movement, making sure transformation was inclusive and equitable, institutionalizing transformation so that progress would hold strong, elevating transformation into systemic advantage, converting capability into strategic leverage, translating momentum into strategic leverage. Translating momentum into measurable impact, aligning results into sustainable trajectories, ensuring those directions that we selected could endure under pressure, expanding stability into opportunity, and demonstrating that influence is now becoming infrastructure. Now, week 21 addresses the next defining leadership question. And once influence exists, how do leaders ensure it survives them? Because in 2026, influence is no longer enough. Influence must ultimately become institutional legacy. So, the emerging leadership reality. Leadership is becoming more temporary while the systems undergirding it are becoming more permanent. Across government, AI, healthcare, defense, energy, entrepreneurship, and enterprise systems, a major shift is accelerating. Organizations are increasingly experiencing leadership turnover, workforce mobility, compressed strategy cycles, AI-driven disruption, changing expectations, rapid ecosystem evolution, and shortened organizational memory. This creates a critical leadership challenge. How do organizations preserve what matters when people, priorities, and environments continuously change? Historically, many organizations relied on charismatic leaders, institutional knowledge residing with individuals, informal networks, historical experience, and unwritten assumptions. But these approaches create hidden fragility because when individuals leave, context disappears, decisions get repeated, momentum resets, priorities drift, and lessons are forgotten. The results, organizations repeatedly build what they once knew. So the pattern that leaders must now recognize is that historically, legacy was viewed as reputation, accomplishments, titles, awards, visibility. But in 2026, legacy is becoming operational. High performing leaders are increasingly asking not what did we achieve, but what did we build that continues creating value into the mid and long term? Because legacy is no longer simply memory, legacy is now sustained capability. So the next leadership shift is that high performing leaders in 2026 are making a critical transition from creating overall organizational success to creating systems that reproduce and amplify that success. They understand that enduring organizations do not depend upon heroic effort only. They depend upon embedded principles, institutional learning, governance discipline, leadership continuity, shared ownership, and decision memory. What institutional legacy actually looks like is that it is not permanent. It is not about resisting change, but rather it is the ability to preserve purpose while adapting methods, sustain performance across leadership transitions, protect values while evolving capabilities, retaining lessons without limiting innovation, building systems that survive individual leaders. And this is where legacy becomes continuity. So there are 4 institutional legacy moves for our week 21. First is to build decision memory because organizations remember events. High-performing organizations remember reasoning. So we want to capture our decision rationale, our assumptions, our trade-offs, our lessons learned, and our risk considerations, because repeated learning creates drag, but institutional learning creates acceleration and amplification. We want to create leadership multipliers because many leaders are focused on only creating followers, but exceptional leaders, well, they're focused on creating the future leaders. So we want to build sponsorship pathways, succession readiness, leadership exposure opportunities, and cross-functional ownership, because the leadership pipelines are legacy. We want to create a continual development process that launches leaders constantly. Number 3, institutionalize values through behavior. Values on posters do not create culture, although I'm sure we've seen them in many boardrooms, meeting rooms, hallways, and even on our desks. But ultimately, it's the behavior that undergirds them and amplifies those values that creates the cultures that we enjoy and thrive in. So we need to embed our values into incentives, hiring decisions, recognition systems, performance expectations, and decision criteria, because organizations become what they repeatedly reinforce. 4, we need to design systems that can outlive individuals. We ask, would this process survive a leadership change? Would the priorities remain clear? Would governance still hold? Would people know why the decisions are being made? Because dependency creates fragility, but durability creates organizational legacy. Why this matters so much now? Because the leadership environment of 2026 continues to be shaped by AI acceleration, workforce transformation, institutional distrust, leadership mobility, infrastructure shifts, ecosystem convergence, and rapid disruption cycles. So organizations that build institutional legacy will be able to sustain performance much longer, reduce organizational friction across, between, up, down, and across, preserve greater organizational trust, maintain strategic clarity, and scale resistantly. Organizations that do not may have to repeat the same lessons again and again and again, lose momentum repeatedly, depend excessively on heroic individuals, and struggle mightily during transitions. The differentiator will not simply be capability. The differentiating will be what survives massive change that we're in. So our week 21 reflection is to consider what knowledge disappears if key people leave tomorrow. Where are we relying on personalities instead of systems? What values exist in words but not behaviors? What capabilities are dependent upon specific individuals? What are we building that will still matter 5 years from now? Because these are not succession questions, they are legacy signals. So for our week 21 action, we need to choose one important initiative and ask, is this institutionalized or person dependent? Is the reasoning and logic documented? Is ownership distributed? Would this survive a leadership transition? And what could potentially strengthen long-term continuity in this area? Take one action that strengthens endurance beyond individuals, because leadership creates impact, legacy creates endurance. So our closing thought for today is that trust creates confidence, traction creates movement, transformation creates capability, trajectory creates direction, endurance sustains stability, expansion creates opportunity, and influence shapes environments. But legacy, well, that what determines whether your impact survives you. And in the leadership environment of 2026, the organizations that lead will not simply create results, they will create systems that continue creating results long after they are gone. That's it for week 21 of Spotlight on What's Next 2026. Dr. Rhonda Farrell, your CEO of Global Innovation Strategies, wrapping up from strategic influence to institutional legacy, designing what endures.